Masai Mara National Reserve is one of Africa's most famous wildlife sanctuaries. Located in southwestern Kenya, it is part of the Greater Serengeti ecosystem, spanning roughly 1,510 square kilometers. The Masai people, who named the reserve Mara for the mottled appearance of its landscape, have lived in the region for centuries, herding cattle alongside wildlife. From low rolling hills to the steep Syria escarpment, the Mara offers a variety of scenery. Every year it draws visitors worldwide, with its sweeping savanna plains, rich ecosystems, and the extraordinary spectacle of mass animal migrations. As a protected area, the Mara balances conservation of its biodiversity with tourism and traditional land uses. Geography and landscape. The Masai Mara lies in southwestern Kenya's Narok County, bordered on the south by Tanzania's Serengeti National Park. It is part of the East African Rift System. The western edge of the reserve is defined by the steep Syria Olulolo escarpment, which is an outcrop of the Rift Valley, extending over 50 kilometers in view. This dramatic escarpment stands over 300 meters above the plains below and offers sweeping vistas of the reserve. In the north and east, the protected area gives way to a mosaic of communal lands and conservancies held by Masai pastoralists. Three main rivers flow through the Masai Mara. The Mara River, with its tributaries the Talek and Sand rivers. These perennial rivers divide the reserve into seasonal grazing zones and ensure water is available throughout the year. The Mara's terrain is mostly open savanna grassland, with scattered groves of trees and shrubs. To the southeast lie gentle hills and occasional kopjes, rocky hills, while to the west the land rises sharply toward the escarpment. In lowland areas along riverbanks, lush gallery forests of fig, doom palm, and other trees line the waterways. Away from rivers, grass species dominate. The grasses include red oat grass and other bunch grasses that grow up to 1 to 2 meters tall in good rains. Shrubby plants such as acacia, croton, and the aromatic tarcananthus, sneezewood scrub, appear in interspersed patches. Mara's name, meaning spotted, reflects the pattern of bush and tree clumps set against open plains. True forests are rare, but small pockets of African bridleia and riverine woodland occur along watercourses. Elevation in the reserve ranges from about 1,500 meters above sea level to over 2,100 meters atop the Olulolo escarpment. This altitude moderates temperatures. Daily highs on the plains are usually in the mid-20 degrees Celsius range, with nights often dropping to 12 to 18 degrees Celsius. It has a semi-arid climate with 2 distinct rainy seasons each year. Rainfall is seasonal and varies across the park. There are 2 rainy seasons, the long rains from March to May, and the short rains around October and November. The eastern Mara is comparatively drier and averages roughly 800 millimeters of rain annually, whereas the western areas near the escarpment receive around 1,200 millimeters per year. Historical evolution and the rise of conservancies. While the Masai Mara is globally recognized today, its boundaries and management have evolved significantly over the last century. Early establishment. The Mara was first gazetted in 1961 as a much smaller wildlife sanctuary, covering only about 520 square kilometers, primarily the Mara Triangle. Over the next decade, it was expanded and formally designated as a national reserve in 1974. The Conservancy Model. Today, the core reserve is buffered by the Greater Mara ecosystem, which includes roughly 15 privately managed Masai conservancies. These border zones add over 1,450 square kilometers of protected wilderness. Community leasing. In these conservancies, Masai landowners lease their parcels to ecotourism partners. This model provides direct, sustainable income to local communities for education and healthcare. It also allows visitors to enjoy exclusive activities that are strictly prohibited in the main reserve, such as guided walking safaris, off-road wildlife viewing, and night game drives. The ground beneath, volcanic ash and black cotton. The staggering density of wildlife in the Masai Mara is not merely a product of its rainfall. It is directly dictated by the complex geology hidden beneath the grass. The Mara is essentially a massive, slow-moving nutritional engine, powered by the ancient, violent history of the Great Rift Valley. The volcanic mineral fallout. Millions of years ago, the tectonic tearing of the African continent produced immense volcanic activity. Winds carried colossal clouds of volcanic ash across the plains, laying down a foundation incredibly rich in essential minerals, particularly calcium and phosphorus. The nutritional anchor of the migration. This ancient ash is the invisible driving force behind the Great Migration. The high mineral content is pulled up by the shallow root systems of the savanna grasses. When hundreds of thousands of wildebeest arrive to calve, they are not just looking for green grass. They are specifically seeking out these mineral-dense pastures necessary for lactation and rapid calf bone growth. The mechanics of black cotton, vertisols. A significant portion of the Mara's flat plains is blanketed in a specific, highly reactive clay soil known scientifically as vertisols, but colloquially feared by guides as black cotton soil. This soil contains a high concentration of expansive clay minerals, such as smectite, which behave fundamentally differently depending on the season. The dry season fissures. As moisture evaporates, the smectite clay shrinks drastically. The ground pulls apart, creating deep, treacherous geometric fissures across the plains. These cracks aerate the soil, but act as hazardous traps for fast-running predators and the axles of safari vehicles. The wet season. Swell. When the rains return, the clay rapidly absorbs water and swells, effectively sealing the surface. Because the water can no longer drain downward, it sits on top, transforming the plains into a remarkably slick, adhesive mud. This specific mud limits the movement of heavy, wheeled vehicles and forces large herds to stick to higher, better drained ground to avoid exhaustion. Habitats and vegetation. The Masai Mara encompasses a mosaic of habitat types within a relatively compact area. Over 95 species of mammals are found here, and more than 550 species of birds, reflecting the variety of environments. Major habitat zones include savanna grassland, the dominant landscape. Vast open plains of grass are dotted with umbrella thorn acacia and patchy shrubs. Dry season grass is short and brown, but after rains the plains burst into a lush green carpet. Interspersed among grasses are seasonal pools and depressions that fill with water in wet months, providing grazing grounds even in drier times. Riverine forest. Along the Mara, Talek, and Sand rivers are narrow strips of woodland and swampy thickets. Trees such as fig, ficus, wild date, Phoenix reclinata, dome palm, hyphane, and diverse shrubs form dense canopy over undergrowth of papyrus, sedges, and reeds in some areas. The permanent Musiara swamp, also called papyrus marsh. In the central Mara is an important wetland of papyrus reeds, sedges, and water lilies. These riverine zones remain green year-round and attract many animals during the dry season. Acacia and woodland patches, away from permanent water, scattered savanna woodlands of acacia and commiphora trees occur. Common tree species include umbrella thorn acacia, Acacia tortilis, which stands out on the flat horizon, and red-green acacia, Acacia xanthophylla, near water. Shrubby bushland dominated by euphorbia and dombea can be found around rocky outcrops. Swamps and pans, seasonal and permanent swamps, dot parts of the Mara. Besides the Musiara swamp, other wetlands appear where groundwater and river overflows create marshes. These support aquatic plants and provide grazing for hippos and waterbuck. Dry pans with a clay bottom provide salt licks and dust baths for wildlife when water evaporates. Escarpment. Woodland. The woodlands atop and on the slopes of the Olulolo escarpment host different vegetation. Here one finds dry scrub and acacia bush more suited to higher elevation, as well as patches of indigenous forest on south-facing slopes. Across these habitats, plant diversity is very high. A survey of the Mara recorded over 1,000 plant species, including grasses, flowering herbs, and succulents. After each rainy season, the grasses and wildflowers explode with new growth, and ephemeral flowers bloom in brilliant colors. For example, red oat grass, Themeda triandra, forms the backbone of the grassland, and bloomers like the tissue paper flower, Crossandra subacaulis, and pajama lily, Crinum makawani, add splashes of color. This floral variety provides food and habitat for herbivores, and the many species of insects and birds. Wildlife of the Mara. The Masai Mara is globally renowned for its abundant wildlife. It supports one of the highest concentrations of large mammals on Earth. Overall, the reserve hosts nearly 2.5 million large herbivores and an equally impressive assemblage of predators. This rich fauna is made possible by the productive grasslands and year-round water. Local names aside, Masai Mara is like a living museum of African savanna life. Mammals. Virtually every iconic African wild mammal can be found in the Mara. It is famous for the Great Migration, but even in the off-season there are permanent populations of many species. Common large herbivores include wildebeest, plain zebra, Thompson's gazelle, Grant's gazelle, impala, topi, Koch's hartebeest, waterbuck, and thousands of giraffes. Herds of African buffalo and elephant wander the plains and woodlands in significant numbers. Smaller antelopes like Kirk's, dik-dik, and bushbuck thrive in shrubland edges, and even eland antelope are present in modest herds. The Masai Mara is one of the few places where all of Africa's big five mammals occur: lion, leopard, elephant, buffalo, and black rhinoceros. Black rhinos are scarce but protected in the reserve. Predators are abundant. Lions are particularly numerous and are often seen in prides, on open hills or in the swamp grass. Leopards use the trees and rocky outcrops as strongholds for ambushing prey. Cheetahs hunt in the open grassland, especially during daylight, chasing down gazelles with their incredible speed. Spotted hyenas form large clans and compete with lions for the reserve's plentiful prey. Other carnivores include jackals, servals, caracals, African wild dogs, now mostly extirpated within the park, and smaller felines like African wildcats. One of the Mara's unique features is its very high large herbivore density, nearly 240 large grazing animals per square kilometer, making it a predator's paradise. Birds. Over 500 species of birds have been recorded in the Mara, making it a prime bird-watching destination. Grassland specialists such as the Kori bustard, secretary bird, and ground hornbill are regularly seen on the plains. Vultures and eagles, more than 50 species of raptors have been noted, patrol the skies looking for carrion or live prey. Herons, storks, and crakes inhabit the marshes, including the shoebill. Though extremely rare, one was once recorded in the Mara. The synergies of wetland and woodland enable diverse communities. Pied kingfishers, blacksmith plovers, and jacanas frequent the water edges, while colorful birds like lilac-breasted rollers and bee-eaters brighten the skies. Many migratory birds arrive from Eurasia. For instance, white storks and sandpipers double the number of marsh birds in the wet seasons. Savanna habitat birds, such as francolins, guinea fowl, and doves, are also common. The Mara Triangle, northwestern corner, is recognized as an important bird area for species such as crowned cranes and vultures. Rarity highlights include the gray-crested helmet shrike and other regionally uncommon species that find refuge here. Other fauna. The Mara's rivers and wetlands support a number of non-mammalian animals. Hippopotamuses gather in deeper pools and the swamp margins year-round. Nile crocodiles lurk at river crossings, posing a threat during the migration. Reptiles like monitor lizards and snakes are present, but less often seen. Small mammals are also plentiful. Troops of olive baboons and colobus monkeys move through woodland, while nocturnal bush babies, galagos, mongoose, and tree-dwelling hyraxes hide in thick cover. Even invertebrates contribute enormously. Termites construct mounds, and arthropod swarms provide essential food for many species. These faunal assemblages make the Mara one of the richest wildlife areas in Africa, if not the world. Indeed, the Mara Serengeti ecosystem holds the largest population of plains, ungulates on the planet. It also supports viable populations of several globally endangered species like African wild dog. Outside the protected area, black rhinoceros and many large birds, highlighting its critical importance for conservation. The alarm network, interspecies eavesdropping. Out here on the Great Plains of the Masai Mara, there is a profound illusion of silence. When the wind dies down and the midday heat settles over the tall, golden grasses, the world seems entirely still. But survival in this ancient landscape is not just about who is the fastest or who possesses the sharpest eyesight. It is about who is the best listener. Beneath the sweeping winds and the rustle of the dry earth, a hidden, continuous conversation is happening. It is a highly complex, interspecies alarm network, a shared acoustic language forged by the absolute necessity of staying alive. Every creature here is a sentinel. When a predator begins to move through the brush, it triggers a ripple effect of sound that travels far faster than any lion or leopard can run. But the animals of the Mara do not merely listen for the heavy footfall of a lioness or the rustle of a stalker in the undergrowth. They actively eavesdrop on the panic of entirely different species. An impala, grazing quietly with its head down in the scrub, is never truly isolated. It is simultaneously tuning into the sharp, barking snorts of a baboon troop in the distant acacia trees, the sudden, frantic chattering of a francolin taking flight, or the sharp whistle of a distant reed buck. They are tapping into a collective radar, utilizing the eyes of those high in the canopy and those scattered across the horizon. This is not a simple, blind panic response. It is a highly calculated, split-second assessment of risk. The herbivores of the Mara have learned to decipher exactly which alarms matter to them, translating foreign tongues into a singular, urgent message. They filter out the false alarms and the irrelevant noise of the savanna. If a small mammal sounds a localized alert for a bird of prey, a grazing zebra or a massive water buck might barely flick an ear. The threat simply does not apply to them. But if a species that shares the exact same vulnerabilities, a creature hunted by the very same predators, sounds the alert, the reaction is immediate and electric. They literally weigh the reliability of the informant. They understand the urgency in the pitch, the cadence, and the repetition of the call. A casual warning snort from a gazelle might just mean a hyena is visible but sleeping in the distance. But a rapid escalating sequence of shrieks from a vervet monkey means the stalk has turned into an active ambush. A solitary antelope can gauge the exact distance, direction, and speed of an incoming threat purely by tracking how the wave of alarm calls moves from one species to the next across the savanna. This shared network forces the Mara's predators into an incredibly difficult evolutionary arms race. A leopard hunting in the thicket isn't just trying to hide from the eyes of its chosen prey. It is trying to slip past the collective hearing of the entire woodland. One snapped twig noticed by a completely unrelated bird can ruin hours of patient, exhausting stalking. In this timeless landscape, where the rules of survival were written long before we arrived, a warning spoken by one becomes the salvation of many. It is an invisible, acoustic web that binds the entire ecosystem together, proving that in the wild, no one truly survives alone. The Great Migration, nature's spectacle. Each year, Masai Mara becomes the stage for one of the most famous natural events on Earth, the wildebeest migration. Around July, as rains end in Tanzania's Serengeti, over 1.5 million blue wildebeest surge northward into Kenya. Accompanying them are hundreds of thousands of zebras and gazelles, moving in search of fresh grasses on the nutrient-rich Mara plains. The migration's timing depends on rainfall and grass growth. Typically, the herds arrive in the Mara from July through September, then head back south by November. The journey includes dramatic river crossings. The Mara River's steep banks and deep waters create natural choke points. Wildebeest and other animals gather on the banks, then plunge into the currents together. Many animals are swept downstream, or are taken by crocodiles lying in ambush. Lions and hyenas often stalk the crossings, attacking weakened or delayed animals. These crossings make headlines each year, but they are just part of a larger pattern. The migration is essentially a circular movement driven by the rains. Scientists describe it as a continuous cycle. After the fresh rains and grass shoot up in the Serengeti, the herds move north. When the rains return to the Mara, the animals feed and breed, then start back as southern plains green up again. More than 300,000 wildebeest calves in the Mara ecosystem between February and March, taking advantage of short rains that trigger grazing, though many calves are born slightly outside the reserve. Predators follow this abundance. The Mara often holds the largest concentration of carnivores in Kenya. The migration and resident animals together ensure a dynamic and vibrant cycle of life. Visitors coming for the Mara during migration season witness a world-famous wildlife show, often referred to as the Great Migration, or one of the natural wonders of Africa. Conservation and challenges. While the Masai Mara is a protected reserve, it faces modern pressures. Rapid human population growth around the park has led to expanding agriculture and settlements. Large farms have encroached near the northern boundary, and fences in some communal lands interrupt traditional wildlife corridors. During drought or crop failures, livestock may graze inside the reserve, leading to conflict with wildlife. Illegal grazing, along with poaching for bushmeat and ivory, have been issues at times. Uncontrolled fires can sweep through the grasslands, and off-road driving by tourists can disturb animals. Tourism, however, is also a source of support. Masai Mara's gate fees and related industries bring income to local communities and conservation agencies. Conservation organizations collaborate with the Masai people to benefit from wildlife. Many parts of the Mara ecosystem beyond the official reserve are now managed as community conservancies, where local landowners receive payments for wildlife protection. The Mara Conservancy, a management body, oversees much of the protected area's daily operations, anti-poaching efforts, and resource use. Strict park regulations limit where vehicles can go and where lodges can be built to minimize habitat damage. As a result of these efforts, many wildlife populations in the Mara have remained stable or recovered. For example, anti-poaching patrols and secure habitats have helped the black rhinoceros numbers gradually increase. Cheetah and lion populations remain robust because of the abundant prey base. Efforts are also underway to reduce human-wildlife conflict. Some farmers use fortified beehive fences or livestock guarding dogs to protect crops and cattle from elephants and carnivores. Conservationists emphasize that long-term protection of the Mara requires balancing ecological needs with community welfare. Integrating traditional Maasai practices of pastoralism with wildlife conservation has been part of this strategy, reflecting the historical coexistence in the region. Overall, Masai Mara is often cited as a success story of community-based conservation on the African savanna. It remains largely unfenced, which allows migrations to continue and wide-ranging animals to survive. Shifting rhythms, the modern threat of climate change. While the physical geography and predators of the Masai Mara have shaped its wildlife for millennia, an invisible, highly unpredictable modern threat is rapidly rewriting the fundamental rules of survival. The ecosystem is facing unprecedented stress from a shifting climate, transforming the once reliable rhythms of the savanna into a volatile battle against extremes. Broken migration clocks. The Great Migration has historically operated as a synchronized clock, deeply tied to the predictable arrival of the long and short rains. Today, the region is experiencing significant warming, with monthly minimum temperatures rising by over 3 degrees Celsius in some seasons. This heat accelerates evaporation, rapidly drying out the landscape and shrinking the critical green window of nutrient-rich grass. Unpredictable weather phenomena, amplified by severe El Niño and La Niña events, cause rains to arrive late, early, or fail entirely. This erratic rainfall disorients the massive herds, leading to splintered migrations. Consequently, the amount of time the wildebeest spend grazing in the Mara has drastically decreased. A residency that once lasted up to 4 months has occasionally plummeted to just 6 weeks. The pendulum of drought and deluge. The Mara is increasingly trapped in a violent pendulum swing between severe drought and devastating floods. Extended dry spells severely deplete the Mara River and seasonal swamps, triggering widespread dehydration and forcing animals to migrate longer distances into riskier, unprotected territories. When the rains finally break, they frequently arrive as concentrated, intense downpours rather than slow, soaking showers. These sudden flash floods alter the steep banks of the river crossings, wash away vital topsoil, and cause sudden temperature drops that can prove instantly fatal to wildlife already weakened by prolonged starvation. The shrinking buffer and rising conflict. The ecological strain does not stop at the reserve's borders. It profoundly impacts the surrounding Masai communities, whose pastoral livelihoods are tethered to the same land. As droughts scorch communal grazing lands, pastoralists are increasingly forced to drive their cattle closer to the reserve's boundaries, and sometimes inside, to find surviving grass. Simultaneously, desperate wildlife wanders into agricultural and settlement areas, seeking water and forage. This forced overlap intensifies the competition for rapidly shrinking resources, increasing the spread of disease between domestic and wild animals, and escalating human-wildlife conflicts that threaten the fragile historic coexistence of the region. The Masai Mara remains one of the richest ecosystems on Earth. Its sweeping landscapes of grasslands, acacia woodlands, and rivers cradle an astonishing diversity of life. Every corner of the reserve hosts scenes from a classic African wilderness. Lions resting under acacia trees, herds of antelope feeding in open grass, flocks of storks rising from wetland marshes. The annual Great Migration symbolizes the Mara's raw, natural drama. Yet throughout the year, even without the migratory crowds, the reserve supports a full circle of life with predators, prey, and plants, all interlinked. This vast natural stage has been shaped by millennia of climate and geology, and by the people who have lived alongside it. Today it is both a haven for wildlife and a mirror for human endeavor, as Masai herders and modern conservationists work to sustain the land's richness. By understanding and preserving places like the Masai Mara, we safeguard not only Kenya's heritage, but one of the most beautiful and balanced ecosystems on the planet. New generations of visitors and scientists continue to learn from its open skies and golden plains. In the Masai Mara, the rhythms of nature continue with remarkable clarity. From the whisper of the wind across grasslands to the thunder of hooves in the migration. This is the story of a wild land that speaks to the soul and invites us to listen to the timeless song of the African savanna.